Hey peeps, it's late, so I'm going to be a little bit quiet here. We're going to be going over the if-else conditional statements. Now, what is an if-else conditional statement? Well, let's look at like a real-world example here really quick. Let's say that Steve is standing at the refrigerator, and Kevin walks up and is like, "Hey man, if you're done, excuse me, done using the refrigerator, go ahead and close it." So we could put this like if Steve is, we'll just do it this way. Steve is done using the refrigerator. That, I don't even know if I spelled that right. If Steve is done using the refrigerator, then we would be like, okay, go ahead and fridge close. There you go. That probably doesn't make any sense to you with the period and stuff because we haven't gone over that, but essentially, you know, instead of that, we'll just write close the fridge. There you go. So that's essentially what this if-else statement is going to be. If Steve is done using the refrigerator, it will close the fridge. So in programming here, we don't write it like that because we got to write it in a way that the computer can understand and interpret it. So let's go ahead and make a local boop is equal to true if boop. Whoops. So in the same way that we did that, all of these conditional statements, they can either be true or they can be false. There is no in between. So if the condition is true, then we'll run this. So if I put print line a boop here, that means if I run this code, you can see we booped. And we did that because this is true. Now if I set this to false, this means that this conditional statement here will not be met, and instead of going in here to run this code, we'll just get past it to the next one since we didn't meet the requirements for it. So start it again and you see that nothing shows up this time, which is exactly what we expected, and that will work if we do this as well. So if I do true in here, this basically is saying that this is, Boolean value true. So this means that this will always run. And you can see, boop. So that's just a simple, true false for the Boolean value for a variable. But that is, just like the very basics. We can do more complicated things. So if we set boop to 5 and we do boop is larger than 5, then if we run this code, you'll see that we do not show anything as well. Because in this conditional statement, we're asking if boop, which is equal to 5, is larger than 5, and 5 is equal to 5, not larger than 5. So we skipped past instead of running the code. So instead, if I set this to 6 and I save it, you'll see now that we actually show it, because now our conditional statement here is true. So it's true, so we go in here and run that code. So that's the very, very basics part here. Let's go ahead and get a little bit more complicated now. The if-else. Now, if I do a else here, whoops, you can see that well, you can't really see because you don't really understand what it means, but this else here can be thought of like a train car couple. So think of this as a train car and this is a train car. So I'm going to go ahead and put print line no boop, sad face. So if we do this, it means that if we meet this condition here, which we are in this case, then we run this code. and we go past. So if it was, for instance, 5, that would mean that 5 is not obviously larger than 5. So we would return false in here, and then it wouldn't run this code, and it'd be like else. So it'd be like if Steve was at the fridge, and it was like if Steve is done with fridge, then close fridge, else get some orange juice. There you go. So in this case, if Steve is done with the fridge, then we'd close it because this statement would be true. But if it's not true, then instead we'll do this. We'll get some orange juice instead. So in that same way, we go back down here, and you can see that we're not going to be returning true for this. So we'll run this part instead here. So you'll see that we will run a no boop, which is just the saddest thing ever. No boop. So now we can tell the difference between the if and the else, but we can also do some things in between as well. Let's say that you have multiple if things that you want to do, and if none of those, then we can do else. Well, we can also do else if boop is smaller than 5. We'll do, we'll do a print line. We'll do a low boop. Low boop. This is a low boop, and this is a high boop. Whoops, I can't spell. This is a high boop. So you got a high boop here because it'd be larger, and this one would be a low boop because it's lower. So if we take this code and we go ahead and run it, save, this is going to give us no boops. You see no boops again. And the reason that is, and it didn't run any of these other areas you saw, is because the value it is false for this, so it defaults to doing this. So if we set this to 1, that would mean what? Would we run this one, 1, this one, 2, or this one, 3? If you said 2, you are correct. So we are going to run 2, and you'll see that this is going to be a low boop. So we'll go ahead and do this. Boom. And as you can see, a low boop. All right, moving right along here. Sometimes we don't need this else at the end. This else means if we don't run any of this other stuff, then we'll do this instead. But what if we only want to do either a high boop or a low boop? We don't want a no boop because that's just sad. Well, we can go ahead and do this. So then we have it set to 1 here. So if boop is larger than 5, which is a false, so we'll go ahead and skip past that. Check the next one here. This condition, if boop is smaller than 5, so 1 is smaller than 5, it is, so that's true. So that means that we're going to go into here, and we're going to do a low boop. So we'll save this, run this again, and you can see low boop. All right, moving right along. We can set this to exactly what to get this to show neither of these. If you said 5, you are correct, because this one fires off if it's larger than 5, and this one fires off if it's lower than 5. The only way to get nothing to show up is for the value to be exactly 5. So if we save this, excuse me, rerun this, you can see that now we don't print out anything because the value is exactly 5. So we didn't run this one and we didn't run this one because neither of these conditions were met. All right, so we've gone over that. Let's go over a little bit with the different types of conditions that we can do. You've seen the greater than and the less than, obviously. The next here would be equal to, which is two equal signs together. You want to make sure that it is two equal signs together, because one equal sign means that we're setting the value of 5 to boop, and that would not return a value of 5. So if I do this and I set this to 1, you see that we ran a boop here. Whoops. And why did it do that? Because you see here boop is equal to 1, and then boop isn't equal, or 1 isn't equal to 5, obviously, so this should return a false, but you see it still ran this boop. The reason for that is because we set the value of 5 to boop, and it succeeded, so it's set its output to true. So remember, very important, you got to have two equal signs here for this. So go ahead and save that. And now when you run this, you'll see that it does not run the boop. See, no boop. All right. So now, moving right along here, we got the greater than or equal to. So if I set this to greater than or equal, that means if I set this to 5, then this will boop. And then if I copy this and I go down here, and you notice that I do not have an else in between these. That's very important. And else is like a car coupler. So like your train can, go from this one to this one. But if there's no else, these can be considered completely separate. If either of these conditions are met, then this will run. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Actually, maybe we'll do it the other way. Yeah, we'll do it this way. We'll do it this way. 6. All right. So what's going to happen if we do this? Well, boop larger or equal to 5. So is 6 larger or equal to 5? It is, and I might do a 5 actually. We'll do it the other way. That might work better. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Okay, so I've now set it to 5. So is 5 larger than or equal to 5? Yes, it is. And in this one, is 5 larger or equal to 6? It is not. So in this scenario, we should only run the first boop here. And you see that we only have one boop. All right, but you can see now, if I set this to 6, we should run this code and say, is boop larger or equal to 5? And it's so 6. Is 6 larger or equal to 5? It is true. And is boop larger or equal to 6? Yes, it is. So 6 is larger or equal to 6. So that means we should run this code, and then we should go down here and run this code as well. So we should have a boop, and then we should have a boop too. So we'll run back into here, run this really quick. As you can see, we got a boop and we got a boop too. So moving right along here, I'm not going to do the less than or equal to. We'll just go ahead and skip down to this one. Now this exclamation point is very useful in programming. It is a inverter. So what is a inverter? An inverter means that we take a value and we invert it. Like if you take a picture and you invert the picture, it inverts the image. Well, it basically means if we have a value of true, we set that value to false. And if we have a value of false, we set that value to true. So what we can do is if boop is not equal to 5. So if 6 is not equal to 5, it is not. If we save this, run this, we'll go ahead and run it, and you can see that we have booped because 6 is not equal to 5. And we can also do other things with this inverter. It doesn't just have to be right here. We can also use it at the beginning of our conditional. So I can, for instance, set this to true. Actually, no, let's do it the other way. We'll set it to false. If we set this to false, and you can see if boop, which is obviously false now, which means that we can't meet this condition, we'll go past it. But what if I put this in the front of it? It has to be in the front of it. Remember that? This will invert this value. This means that this false is now going to be a true, which means that this boop will go through. So if I save this, and go ahead and run this, you can see that we have booped. So the inverter is very useful. A lot of people won't run into a whole bunch of uses for it, depending on what you're doing, but they all have their uses. But yeah, peeps, that is how we use the if-else conditional statement. You can see that it's a little complicated if you're just starting out in programming to understand, but it's very useful. I think pretty much every language would probably have it that actually does anything. You need it for loops, and you need it for checking all kinds of stuff. So pretty much every program is going to have at least some form of this, unless if it's just like a simplistic program that just has all the other stuff and you're just like overriding a value or something. But if you're doing fancy stuff, you usually need this, so it's very important to know and to understand how it works. And with that, peeps, I'm sure I've gone way later than I wanted to, but that's going to be it for this video. So I'm going to go ahead and call it here, peeps.